Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel. September 11th, 2017.
2:05 here on the great WRKO. Okay, my friends, today is the 16th anniversary of the horrific September 11 Islamic terrorist attacks. And we're going to talk about it, obviously. But before I get to this issue, just very quickly, Brittany, what is the poll question of the day, sponsored by Bill Kelly Financial Services, and what are the results thus far?
Does the Catholic Church have an economic interest in illegal immigration?
Yes.
If you believe the answer is yes,
Yes.
text A to 680-680. If you believe the answer is no, text B to 680-680, or go to WRKO.com and vote there. And as always, the poll question is sponsored by Bill Kelly Financial Services. The results are 98% yes, 2% no.
And no, I'm with Bannon on this one. I think Dolan is wrong on this. Cardinal Dolan, with all due respect, is wrong, and I think Bannon is right. Okay, but, all right, 16th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. It is a day I will never forget. I was in Washington, D.C. at the time. I was driving through the city. It was an absolute ghost town. At the time, we did not know it was Islamists who attacked us, that it was Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. In fact, the Twin Towers had just come down. The Pentagon had been hit. And, of course, Flight 93 crashed in rural Pennsylvania, probably on the way to either hit the Capitol building, or to hit the White House. Today, President Trump commemorated the victims of 9/11. Roll it, Brittany.
To the family members with us today, I know that it's with a pained and heavy heart that you come back to this place. But by doing so, by choosing to persevere through the grief, the sorrow, you honor your heroes. You renew our courage, and you strengthen all of us. You really do. You strengthen all of us. Here on the west side of the Pentagon, terrorists tried to break our resolve. It's not going to happen. But where they left a mark with fire and rubble, Americans defiantly raised the Stars and Stripes, our beautiful flag that for more than 2 centuries has graced our ships, flown in our skies, and led our brave heroes to victory after victory in battle. The flag that binds us all together as Americans, who cherish our values and protect our way of life. The flag that reminds us today of who we are, what we stand for, and why we fight. Woven into that beautiful flag is the story of our resolve. We have overcome every challenge, every single challenge, every one of them. We've triumphed over every evil and remained united as one nation under God. America does not bend. We do not waver, and we will never, ever yield. So here at this memorial, with hearts both sad and determined, we honor every hero who keeps us safe and free, and we pledge to work together, to fight together, and to overcome together every enemy and obstacle that's ever in our path. Our values will endure. Our people will thrive. Our nation will prevail, and the memory of our loved ones will never, ever die. Thank you. May God bless you. May God forever bless the great United States of America. Thank you very much.
I thought it was a very moving speech. I thought it was a very patriotic speech. It was the speech of a nationalist, of somebody you can tell the 9/11 attacks because he is a New Yorker of course, he's an American, but Trump is a New Yorker at his core. That city was especially hard hit on that day. And you can see it still resonates with him 16 years later. And I agreed with every sentiment in his speech. I think it's a necessary speech. I think it was a brilliant speech. However, I have to ask this question. Are we truly united in our resolve? I know you are. I know I am. I know this audience is. But the country as a whole, it's now 16 years into the war on terror. Because remember, we were attacked on that day. We were attacked. The Islamists declared war upon America and upon the West itself. Are we winning this war or are we losing this war? 16 years into this war, are we winning or are we losing? Because I look at large parts of this country, much of the left, almost every liberal that I know, for them, this day almost never happened. In fact, don't even take my word for it. The New York Times today, don't take my word for it. Look it up. Go online. There is not even one mention that this is the 16th anniversary of the 9/11 Islamic terrorist attacks. Not one mention. They didn't even mention it. Now, I'm not talking about some, third-rate local paper, I don't know, in Jerkwater, USA. You go, they're a bunch of amateurs. Not only is this the supposed New York Times, what, New York wasn't affected on 9/11? You're a New York paper? 3,000 Americans died. The Twin Towers came down. Downtown New York was a heap of rubble. And 16 years, I'm not talking 160 years, I'm talking 16 years after, as we still live in the shadow of 9/11. And you can't even mention it in your own freaking paper? I mean, it's not as if 9/11, I don't know, not as if 9/11 affected New York at all. No, nothing to do with it. It's incredible. So, honestly, I don't think we're united. As a nation, as a people, as a culture, I think the left is against this war. I think the left just wants to bury 9/11. They hate the patriotism that was erupted and created and triggered after that attack. The nationalism, the pride in this country, the resolve in this country. And furthermore, when you now look at the sheet, at the balance sheet, we're now 16 years in. Is Islamic terrorism receding or is it on the rise? Are we winning or are we losing? Because I look at this 16 years later, and honestly, my friends, I don't want to be the skunk at the party, but somebody's got to say it. We're still mired in a war in Afghanistan with no end in sight. We're still mired in Iraq. ISIS is now metastasizing across the Middle East and much of North Africa. They have now pulled off many more 9/11 style attacks, whether it be in Madrid, in London, in Paris, in the south of France, in Germany. They have hit us here on the homeland repeatedly, Boston being an example, the Boston Marathon terrorist bombing. In other words, I don't see radical Islam in retreat. I see radical Islam, frankly, advancing and surging. And not only that, I see a political media elite that refuses in the name of political correctness to even utter the words radical Islam. And on top of that, I'm literally the heir to Osama bin Laden. Literally. Okay, he's got 3 sons. Well, this one, Junior, Hamza bin Laden, has now become the anointed successor to Al-Qaeda and now says that he wants to unify Islamic terrorists all over the world. And so now, in the wake of his father, now many of these Islamic jihadists are now looking to the son of bin Laden, Hamza, to continue their holy war and jihad against the Christians and Jews of the Middle East, against Europe and the West, and against Israel and America. It's not going to end. We're 16 years in, and it seems to me that they're a hell of a lot more serious about waging this war than, frankly, we are. And not only that, but I think what we've also found out in the last 16 years is that our own political elites and our own establishment hijacked the war on terror. They did. And it was crystal clear, whether it be under Bush and especially under Obama, but under both, with the Patriot Act, creating a national surveillance state, whereby they are now spying upon American citizens, collecting mass data, millions and millions and millions of our emails, of our texts, Facebook posts, you name it, is now being read and spied upon by our own government. Shredding the Constitution, shredding the Bill of Rights, shredding the Fourth Amendment in particular. We're giving up our freedoms and our liberties in a war that we're at best half-heartedly prosecuting. And there is no ultimate strategy for victory. In fact, our own leaders have not even defined what victory truly is or what it looks like. It is the exact opposite of World War II or World War I. And so the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, and I want to ask all of you Kuhner Country to please weigh in on this, because I'd love to hear your take, is 16 years after the attacks on 9/11, are we winning or are we losing the war on Islamic terrorism? If you believe the answer is yes, we are winning this war, we're going to win this thing and we are winning it, text the letter A to 680 680. If you believe that we're losing this war on terrorism, that is just going on indefinitely with no end in sight, then text the letter B to 680 680. You can you can vote online, forgive me, at WRKO.com. You can also text us at 680 680, 617-266-6868. Before I take all of your calls, to the victims and to their families, I just want everybody to know that we will never forget what happened on that fateful day, that we will always honor you and cherish your memory. We're not the New York Times. We're not the liberal media. And to the families out there, those who lost loved ones, I want them to know that Kuhner Country stands behind you shoulder to shoulder. And so, in honor of them, please, Kuhner Country, let us give a moment of silence. 224 here on the great WRKO. Okay, the 16th anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Let me ask you, 16 years into the war on terror, are we winning or are we losing? Aaron in New Hampshire, you're up next. Go ahead, Aaron.
Good afternoon, Jeff. God bless you and everybody else in Kuhner Country in America today.
Thank you, Aaron.
I think the troops are doing the best they can with this, but unfortunately, as a society inside this country, we've lost focus on what 9/11 actually meant. And here's what I mean, just two examples of that. One, I remember it was about 2 or 3 days after 9/11, everybody had American flags on their car. And I was driving with my stepbrother, and he said to me, he said, Aaron, you remember this. You remember all these flags, because 6 months to a year from now, you're not going to see it this way. People will forget. And sure enough, you don't see all the American flags. I know ever since I've had an American flag on any of my vehicles, but you don't see the solidarity like we saw right after 9/11. It's kind of been forgotten a little bit. Just that solidarity, not 9/11 itself. And the second example, and this one's important, and, I was talking with a liberal about a month ago about 9/11, and I made the point where Clinton knew who Osama bin Laden was. And he could have done something about it, but he didn't for his own political views. And, look, now we have over 3,000 people dead. And in response to what I had said, that liberal actually said, well, there's too many people in this world anyway.
Did he really say that?
It was a woman, yeah.
Oh, it was a woman. I'm sorry. Did she really say that?
Yeah, and I can't tell you what my response was on the air, but I remember thinking about it after, and I remember thinking, a lot of people in this country, for their own political identity, just to prove their point and go against what's going on in our country today, if they don't even take 9/11 how serious and what it was, and remembering what it was, and having any respect for it, it's bound to bring us down, and it's bound to have it happen again. And I think that's extremely sad, that the further we get away from 9/11, the further people will just totally ignore it just to prove their own political point for what's going on today.
Aaron, great point. Great point. Thank you for that call. Really, to me, you hit the nail on the head. Well, look, remember, take World War II. After World War II, how many books were written on World War II? How many movies were made about World War II? Everybody knew about FDR, Churchill, whatever, Stalin, Hitler, all the major players, the big conferences. I mean, it was just so ingrained in our popular imagination, right? And we were proud that we defeated the Nazis. Now, don't mention Islam. Don't mention Muslim. Don't mention extremists. Don't mention terrorism. Don't mention them. Don't mention radical Islam. Don't say it. So our popular culture doesn't want to discuss the fact that what happened on 9/11, what were the causes of 9/11, the consequences of 9/11. They don't even want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. In fact, look, I'll be honest with you. Many in the media, and frankly, it's not just the liberal media. I'll be very candid with you. Today is just like another day. They don't even mention it. It's not even worth a sentence. The New York Times won't cover it. Others are just laughing and giggling. I mean, it's just because they don't care. Look, deep down, let me tell you what I think 9/11 showed. For a large section of America, their patriotism, if they even have any, is skin deep. It's superficial. It's the me generation. Tom in New Jersey, you're up next. Go ahead, Tom.
Hey, Jeff, God bless you. Red, white, and blue, especially on 9/11. Jeff, I'm going to swing back to who I've identified as Pope Judas. Jeff, I'm a practicing Catholic. I take no joy or no outrage or no pleasure in calling Pope Francis Pope Judas because simply that's what he is, Jeff. What has he done to push back militant Islam other than this weak, wussy outreach to Islam? President Trump comes to visit him, Jeff, and what does he do? Instead of trying to convert him, he's close to being a Catholic anyway. He gives him a book on climate. He's a radical militant Islam denier. He says Christians don't build walls, Jeff, and then what does he do? He's got a 40-foot wall, so I guess he's not a Christian if you connect the dots on that one. And Jeff, what does he say? He says you conquer terrorism with love. I guess under that theory, we should have coexisted with Adolf Hitler. He says there's no such thing as a just war. He's just defecated on the entire military that fought for our freedom in World War II. Jeff, he's owned lock, stock, and barrel by the left. He's a New World Order Pope. And I'll leave you with two facts. I don't, as a Catholic, I don't worship the Pope, and we've had bad popes in the past. God bless you, Jeff.
Thank you, Tom. Well, he's the Obama of the Catholic Church. And I think, to me, he's one of the worst popes we've ever had, but let that go. 617-266-6868. I don't want to get off topic. 9/11, today is the 16th anniversary. Are we winning or are we losing the war on terror? We're 16 years in. Are we more unified or more divided now, looking back 16 years? 617-266-6868. More with your calls. Next.
WRKO, the voice of Boston.
Here on the west side of the Pentagon, terrorists tried to break our resolve. It's not going to happen. But where they left a mark with fire and rubble, Americans defiantly raised the Stars and Stripes, our beautiful flag that for more than 2 centuries has graced our ships, flown in our skies, and led our brave heroes to victory after victory in battle. The flag that binds us all together as Americans, who cherish our values and protect our way of life.
2:37 here on the great WRKO. Okay, the 16th anniversary of the 9/11 Islamic terrorist attacks. And the question I'm posing is 16 years now into the war on terror. 16 years. That's more than 3 times what we fought in World War II. Are we winning or are we losing this war? And to me, you may disagree with me, I think we're losing this war for many reasons. But one of them is you now have a large segment of the American population, the Democratic Party and the media, actually convincing themselves and trying to convince us that the biggest threat we face is not radical Islam. No, 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 no. It's the KKK and white supremacy and neo-Nazis. Don't believe me? Listen to Maxine Waters. I swear to you. Mad Maxine. She wants the federal government to hunt down all of these neo-Nazis because they're such a threat. Well, they're even a threat to her. Roll it, Brittany.
I think we should focus a lot on domestic terrorism also. So I would like to ask again, given all that you have said about how difficult it is and the privacy concerns, do you have any thoughts about what we can do to begin to deal with the KKK and the white nationalists, the extremists, the alt-right? They're on the internet, Brett Bart. If you look at the YouTube, you see how much they want to kill me and others. What can we do?
They want to kill me. No, nobody wants to kill you, Mad Maxine. Here's what I mean. See? No. It's the KKK. That's the real enemy. Ay. 617-266-6868. God help us. John, you're up first. Go ahead, John.
Hey, Jeff. Great show.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for everything you do. I want to give a quick shout out to my wife, Lynn. Hey, Lynn. Jeff, real quick, I think the reason why we're not that united is because, my parents are World War II generation, and I remember, my dad was Navy, and it was always, remember Pearl Harbor. Remember, they drilled that into us. Remember Pearl Harbor. And today, you don't get that. The schools don't get it. The parents don't say, remember 9/11. They don't know the truth about 9/11. So it's just not in the psyche of our country. And also, there was no draft. There's no draft after 9/11 like there was, that build up to World War II. So the whole culture wasn't fully on board with the war. So it's. I think we have a long way to go. It takes leadership, but we just don't have it right now.
John, thank you very much for that call. Well, look, I agree with you. Nobody remembers, or very few. We do, but when I say nobody, many people in the country, let's put it that way, they've forgotten 9/11. They don't want to remember 9/11. It's an inconvenience to remember 9/11. And it's even something more than that. Here, ask most liberals. In fact, even ask most millennials. How many hijackers were there? I don't know. 5, 10, I don't know. Okay, most of the hijackers were from what country? I don't know. They wouldn't even be able to recount to you literally the basics of the attack. But I'll tell you this, they all know about man-made climate change. They all know that Robert E. Lee, slavery, you got to bring down that monument. They all know about the founding fathers. Oh, those were slaveholders. You see, when it comes to hating their own country, then they got that down to a T. But to remembering real Americans being slaughtered by real enemies, come on. Hey, come on. You got to watch the game tonight. What's on YouTube? Susan in Norwood. Go ahead, Susan.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi.
Great show. I listen to you all the time.
Thank you, Susan.
I don't know whether you know this or not, but the last week there's a channel on cable called AHC, American History Channel.
Yes.
They all, for the last week, have played 9/11, from the roots of it to what happened that day to what happened to the people afterwards. I'm telling you, Jeff, I was crying when I watched that. I was crying as if it were happening right now, because I remember that day. I remember the horror of that day. And I was a stewardess one time in my life. And especially on the Shanksville plane, the bravery that those people showed, to me, was utterly stunning and should never be forgotten by anyone. And just a little aside to that, I had a decal on my car that said 9/11/01, and underneath it said, "Let's roll." And the reason for that was my association with being a stewardess and the hell that those people lived through that day and their families. I came out of the supermarket one day and it was gone. And my heart was broken. I have been unable to find one again since then. But every time I walked in towards the rear of my car, I saw that and thought of those people. So I think we're going right down the drain as a country, and I think this is just part of it. It's too bad. But I will always remember them, and I know people like you and your callers will always remember.
Susan, very beautiful.
I thank you very,
thank
very
you.
much
No,
for
Susan,
all you do.
Thank you for sharing this with us. I had one of those bumper stickers. Let's roll. It was on a Honda Civic. I had to sell it. It was too old. That's why I don't have it anymore. But I had that bumper sticker. And if you remember, we've forgotten this now because it's 16 years now, or some of us have. That plane was heading either for the Capitol building or for the White House. Now, let me just tell you, it's not just all the lives that they saved on that plane. I got to be careful how I couch this, but when I was at the Washington Times, I interviewed senior people in the White House about that day. Let me tell you what they told me. Okay, you pretty much can guess who told me this, but anyway. Had that plane hit the Capitol building or hit the White House, they say, number one, they believe the country literally would have gone like berserk. I mean like berserk. And the politicians on Capitol Hill and they would have gone berserk. Because that is the very symbol, Congress, the White House, of our constitutional republic. They believe there may have been so much pressure on the president to literally drop an atomic bomb. They openly say that. They think the pressure would have been so immense from the population, from the generals, from the military, from so many politicians, that it may have overwhelmed the president, whether he wanted to or not, and we could have likely had a nuclear retaliation. That's what it was like on 9/11 that day. We forget it now. And furthermore, when you actually look at Flight 93, they had heard about the Twin Towers. They had heard about the Pentagon. So they knew they were going down. They knew it was going to hit someplace in D.C. And so they told each other, we're going to die. In fact, witnesses, they called up members of their families. And they said, look, we're going down. We're going to die. But we don't want this plane to kill other Americans. So we're going to rush the cockpit. We're going to sacrifice our lives for our fellow Americans. And I don't know why this detail stands out in my mind, but it just does. Because I was a husband then. I mean, I'm still a husband now, but now I have children. I'm a father. Then I was just a husband. And Grace, she's everything to me. Don't get me wrong. But now I have her, I have Ashton, I have Ava, right? There's 4 of us. Then it was just 2 of us. a couple of the men, young men, told their wives, I want you to know, I want you to find somebody else. They even had children, and they said, no, I don't want you to be alone for the rest of your life. I want you to find somebody else. I want somebody to help you raise the children, have a family, and live your life. And I want you to know that I'm not going to hold it against you. That I want you to live your life. So don't think of me. I'm going to do this, but I want you to live your life. And that's how they hung up. And that's when they charged the cockpit. That's when they said, let's roll. And I remember because I was a young husband then. Grace and I were married, I think, 5 years? 5 years. And I remember thinking, if I was on that plane and I was calling my wife, I was calling Grace, God is my witness, I think I would say that to her. Something like that. You're in your early 30s. I want you to get married again. I want you to live your life. Okay? I love you, and we'll meet each other in heaven. Their self-sacrifice, not just for their fellow countrymen, which is incredible, don't get me wrong, for fellow Americans, but even for their spouses. That at that moment, they're even saying, look, I want you to even ultimately forget about, well, of course you remember me, but in a sense, I want you to move on. Okay? I want you to live your life. Their sense of complete self-sacrifice, I'll just never forget it. And why there aren't statues in their honor is beyond me. Why there aren't major Hollywood movies like we used to have after World War II honoring them is beyond me. Because their valor, their honor, their patriotism, their nobility is the best of America. 617-266-6868. Carlos, you're up next. Go ahead, Carlos.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Carlos?
I'm good. First of all, I'd like to say what a great show you're running today.
Thank you, Carlos.
Honoring and recognizing 9/11. I'm a volunteer fireman with the Bronx Volunteer Independence Corps 4 in the Bronx. On this day, I also like to say hi to my chief, Gene Wiedemann, and my chief, Peter Segee. We were all there on 9/11. The very first day it happened on that day. I think that we also need to remember that I put it very carefully when I say that the terror attack was a brand in everybody's heart. It's like we were branded. Because when you brand a cow or anything like that, it's forever. So that would always stay in our heart. I remember the emotions that many firefighters, I remember there was a battalion that went with 16 men, and the only 2 that survived were sitting on a rock. I actually have that picture. And they just didn't want to leave the flames after the buildings came down. They had lost their whole division in there. And it was just an emotional thing, not only for the families. I also would like to send my condolences to everyone that lost a loved one. But a lot of hearts and emotions were disturbed on that day. A lot of situations that they had to endure. I remember being placed in Pier 51, where actually remains were being put together of loved ones, and people would go in and come out screaming and yelling, and it was very an emotional time for everyone. Scenes that will never leave our memories. I remember the back of Building 1, where people were actually jumping from the building itself. So those pictures will always remain, and I think that we lose track of really what happened here. We have very great, intelligent minds in our government, and I'm pretty sure that with the past presidents, and I'm sure you're aware of, who attempted to capture bin Laden and Saddam and so on, these people are the ones that took advantage of this opportunity.
Yes.
And I'm sure that they knew, like I said, these are very intelligent people. One of the brightest minds are in Washington. And they knew exactly where this would go. But I think that they just took the opportunity to go after whoever they were wanting to get, and they've been doing it. I think there was 3 presidents that were trying to get these people, and this opened another door for them to go and do what they want to do, and they didn't think of how long the war was going to be, but I'm sure that they knew the length of the war, but they really didn't think about the lives that were going to be lost and how long we were going to have to endure.
Carlos, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I'm up against a hard break, but I want to thank you for your heroism and your bravery and for what you did on 9/11. God bless you. And please call again.
Yes.
God bless you. 617-266-6868. We will never, never forget. Donna, you're up next. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Oh, hi, Jeff.
Hi.
Listen, just a couple things. Number one is regarding our winning this war. This caliphate is well established in our country, the beginning of it. 9/11 told us about that. There are thousands of Islamic training mosques that have the same materials in them that ISIS does. Manchester, New Hampshire has one that is rated at the highest level of risk. They're all over the place. So people have to remember this isn't just about that they are embedded. Obama made sure CARE was brought into the administration. They are what the Muslim Brotherhood created to make it look more popular, more publicly appealing, and not quite so, quote, extremist, even though they're identical. So don't forget, this is like a major, major thing. It's not going to end. They'd like to take us over completely by 2030. So this is ongoing. They never give up. For 1,400 years, they haven't. So I can't say that we've won it. They've been allowed to embed themselves here. We've got to clean that out. The second thing is we are moving, and I wanted to tell you that the reason why I won't be able to call for a little while until we get you hooked up on the computer and until you actually get down south where the people have a brain in general and where you could really be syndicated and broadcast wide and far to a lot of people that would love to hear from you. And I will miss talking to you until I can get back.
Donna, we're going to miss you. Listen, safe travels down south, and let us know when you get set up.
We will. And Vinny says hi, and when he gets his computer hooked up, he's gonna try to call.
Good. I miss Vinny as well.
He's doing great, honey. And listen, please get syndicated too. We need and come down there. It's a little cheaper and it's a hell of a lot nicer.
We're working on it. We're working on syndication. God bless you, Donna.
Can't wait.
Have a safe trip. Take care. 617-266-6868. Okay. I don't have time to squeeze in one more call. Okay. Look, my friends, just to sum it up, the role of the Saudis has been covered up in 9/11. The shredding of our civil liberties, the creation of the national surveillance state, spying on Americans. Look what they did by placing the TSA at all of our airports. We're slowly losing all of our personal liberties. The politicians hijacked it to give themselves even more power, and it's endless war with no victory in sight. My friends, we have to defeat political correctness. The real enemy is at home. I gotta go. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer, remembering the fallen on the 16th anniversary of 9/11. God bless you all.
The voice of Boston is you. 680 WRKO Boston, 93.7 WEEI HD2 Lawrence, Boston. It's 3 o'clock.